Whoa, you guys are already here. Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry I'm late. Hey, today we're talking about singular and plural. Sorry about that. Nouns again, inflection, watch the endings, but let's talk about it a little bit in English first. Singular and plural. This is easy. Singular nouns, you've got one individual or a collection of individuals. Plural, you have more than one individual or more than one collection. Let's talk about what that means. A man, that's one man, that's singular. A ship, singular. A company, singular. A society, singular. A shrunken head, if you're from certain parts of the world, singular. A dozen, now that one's weird. Listen, it's a dozen, but it's 1 dozen. See, so it's still singular even though it's 12 things. Kind of confusing. A filch, I hate filches. This, by the way, is also called number. Singular, plural, linguists call it number. Maybe it makes it a little bit easier to understand if you understand. That was redundant. Someday I'll tell you what redundant means. It makes it easier to understand if you realize we're talking about one thing or more than one thing. So one number or more than one number. Plural. In English, to make something plural, we usually add an S or we add an ES. With some words like man, you change the spelling. So one man is a man, but more than one man is men. Ship becomes ships. Company becomes companies. Little spelling change there. Society, societies. A shrunken head. If you're a wealthy headhunter, shrunken heads. Got them all over the place. A dozen, dozens of eggs. The chickens lay dozens of eggs. Filches. I hate filches more than I hate one filch. One filch is a pain, but filches, Same thing works in Latin. But before we get to that, let me tell you a story about singular and plural. There was a Roman emperor once who went to the baths. His name was Hadrian. Back then, I don't know if you do know this actually, the Romans really didn't have bathrooms in their houses, that they visited as much as baths that they all went to. Now the baths were kind of like gymnasiums or the rec center or the YMCA. Well anyway, this Roman emperor went to the bath and he was taking a bath, and the Romans, to clean themselves up, would put oil all over themselves and then have slaves scrape it off with blades. Disgusting. Well, one old guy was standing there rubbing his back up against a column inside the baths. And so Hadrian walked up to him and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I can't afford a slave to scrape the oil off my body." So Hadrian actually gave him some of his slaves with some scrapers. The guy was an old soldier. He had fought for Hadrian. So Hadrian treated him kindly, returned the favor. The next day when Hadrian came to the baths, he had trouble getting in because there were people rubbing their backs against every column in the building. The first day it was singular. The second day it was plural. What can we learn from that? Here's what I learned from that. When you raise your hand to ask to go to the restroom, I'm going to say no, because when you see me say yes, when your friends hear me say yes, what are all your friends going to do? Yeah, they're all going to raise their hands. That's what I learned from the story of Hadrian. So no, put your hand down. You can't go to the restroom. And don't pause this lesson either. Stay and listen. Singular and plural. One thing, singular. More than one thing, plural. Very easy. Now remember the inflection in Latin. Remember the endings that we talked about. If it ends with a A, it's feminine. If it ends with a US, it's masculine. If it ends with a UM, it is neuter. We can't just add S. The Romans weren't English. That's how our language works. Theirs doesn't work the same way. Let's take these one at a time. Ladies first. If you have a feminine word that ends with an A, to make it plural, you add an E. So insula means island, but islands would be insulae with an AE at the end. Puella. Puella means girl. If there's one girl, fine, puella. If it's like my house and there's 4 girls running around, puelle, you add an E or an AE to the end of the word puella. Masculine items. Lupus. Let me back up. masculine words end with us, remember? So, ursus means bear. If you have one bear, ursus. If you have more than one bear, you drop the us, which terrorists all over the world want to do. You drop the us and you replace it with an I. Ursus becomes ursi. Lupus. Lupus means wolf. If you have more than one wolf chasing you, you wouldn't say lupus, you'd say lupi. This reminds me, by the way, lupus, of one of my biggest fears. Gary Larson, who wrote The Far Side, put it in comic form, lupus lipophobia, fear of being chased around the kitchen table while wearing only socks on a floor that was just mopped. Fear of being chased around that table by timber wolves. We all actually suffer from lupus lipophobia, if you think about it. Podium. Podium is neuter. It ends with a um. But to make podium plural, you drop the and replace it with an a. So, podia, if you need more than one podium to speak. Tectum in Latin. Tectum means roof. This is where we get the word protect. Someone goes into the house to be protected from the rain or the heat or the sun or the hail. Protection means you have a roof over you. Your parents are protection for you. Tectum means roof, but that's only one roof. If you have a house with multiple roofs, roofs, roofus, whatever. English is complicated. If you have a house with more than one roof, tecta. Or if you have a bunch of houses on the street, you can't have just tectum, because then all the houses on the street would share one roof. You'd have to have tecta. Drop the add an a. Remember, singular and plural in English, singular and plural in Latin. In English, mostly we add s or es. In Latin, the rules are different. We're going to make a lot of changes in the spelling. Again, it's inflection. Get used to it. The endings of the word are going to change, and that's going to become important when we translate sentences. So, back to what I was doing.